basis for everything you will do in SwiftUI is the view protocol. Each view in SwiftUI will be a value type, a struct, conforming to the view protocol. View has one requirement, the body property, which provides some sort of UI element to be rendered. The body is where your SwiftUI code will go, and whatever you write will be interpreted and rendered out to the device. Let's start up a new SwiftUI project in Xcode to try this out ourselves. When you open Xcode and start a new project, you'll notice the option to select SwiftUI for the interface and for the lifecycle. With that, you'll get a basic project for a Hello World app. It's pretty tiny. You've got just 2 Swift files in here. The app, which loads up an instance of Content View, and then you've got Content View, which right now represents all of the UI in your app. We've got this little bit of code on the left and a preview of the resulting UI in the canvas over here on the right. It may take a minute to load up the first time. By default, whichever simulator or device you have selected as the current scheme is what your app will preview in here. Any changes you make to the code show up in the canvas, and if you select something in the canvas, it selects the matching code. All of this magical previewing is driven by the code at the bottom of the file. All of this is just for generating live previews onto the canvas and won't actually run on production builds. The naming convention of your view's name and an underscore isn't necessary to get your previews working, but it is generated automatically like this. Whatever you put inside of this previews property will show up over in the canvas. Right now, that's just an instance of Content View. Speaking of Content View, note that its body property contains a text component. This padding bit after it is a SwiftUI modifier. We'll take another look at these in the next episode. Delete it for now. What if you wanted to change the structure of the body to something other than just one text component? That's something that would happen fairly often in UI work, right? SwiftUI gives us access to a set of new, yet familiar, primitive types such as text, which you've already used, but also image. Open the library. This is a great way to browse for new SwiftUI things to try out. In this first tab on the left, you'll find your options for various SwiftUI views, like text. Pick an image component and drag it into the code. That's pretty cool, but the initializer we actually want to use takes the name of a system image, which will grab an SF symbol for us. Let's use the Swift. If you ever need to reload the preview, you can use this button or the keyboard shortcut Option Command P. Over in the canvas, you should see 2 previews now. There are some times when this is actually the structure that you want, and we'll take a look at that in part 2. But for now, we're going to tell SwiftUI where we want these 2 things laid out in relationship to one another. The basic building block of layout in SwiftUI is the stack. To make one, Option-Command-click on one of these views and embed in VStack. Then move the other view into that closure. Stacks come in 3 flavors: vertical, horizontal, and depth. Just like text and image, all those stacks conform to view, and you'll try them all out in a later episode. Right now, check out what the VStack is doing for you over in the canvas. My favorite thing about VStacks is their content stacks in code just like it does in the canvas. The thing on top renders on top and then continues on down so that the thing at the bottom renders on the bottom. Okay, so you may be wondering, what is going on with this SomeView type for body? We've effectively returned a text here and now a VStack. I've said that view is a protocol, so we can assume that both of those other types conform to view. But it is a little more complicated than that, so let's look at this definition real quick. Command-click on View and jump to the definition. This is it. It's not very long. Well, if you scroll down, you'll see it has a lot of extensions, but the base protocol itself is quite tiny. Still, there is some fancy Swift going on in those 2 lines of code. We've got this view builder thing here. This is a property wrapper. And hey, body is using an associated type. If you've dealt with protocols with associated types before, you might be thinking, hang on now, you can't use a protocol with an associated type here. And you're right, body couldn't just be a view, but it can be some view. If you're not familiar with associated types, you might be thinking, what's the big deal? For now, it's enough to know that this sum keyword and view builder are doing some heavy lifting for you behind the scenes. And practically, if you leave body's type as some view, and whatever things you've got inside of body are some type conforming to view, the final type can be automatically inferred. You never need to set the return type manually, no matter how long or complex your view hierarchy gets. I'll leave some links in the author's notes for this episode if you're interested in learning more about the Swift behind SwiftUI. Okay, now that we've got these two views, how do we, say, change the color or the font size or anything about them at all? For that, we need to learn about modifiers.